Jamal is a 14-year-old boy living in a poor neighborhood in the suburbs of Atlanta. His neighborhood is surrounded by narrow alleys, dilapidated houses, and an air thick with dust and smoke. Yet, despite the difficult circumstances, Jamal always keeps a smile on his face. He is the eldest son in the family, living with his mother and his little sister, Lily, who is 6 years old. Jamal's father passed away in a work accident many years ago, leaving his mother to shoulder the burden of the family. Every morning, as the sun begins to rise, Jamal wakes up early to help his mother prepare breakfast and take care of Lily. He often uses his spare time to do various odd jobs around the neighborhood, from delivering groceries to washing cars for nearby residents. Although he earns only a few coins each day, he always tries his best to help his mother pay the rent and buy food. One day, after school, Jamal went to a small market to sell handmade crafts created by his mother. Although the work was tough and he was often mocked by older kids in the neighborhood, Jamal persevered. He dreamed of one day escaping the neighborhood and taking his mother and Lily to a better place. In his heart, that dream was like a small flame, always burning bright no matter how hard life became. As the sun set, Jamal packed up his stall and walked along the familiar road leading home. The neighborhood was quiet now, illuminated only by the dim glow of streetlights. Little did he know, tonight would mark the beginning of a significant change in his life. On his way home, Jamal passed through a dark alley. The dim light from the street lamp barely illuminated the surroundings, but he heard distant screams. The faint cries of a woman echoed, mixed with the menacing voices of strangers. "Hand over the bag. Old lady, don't waste our time," one of the men growled threateningly. Jamal froze in his tracks. His heart pounded, but he didn't hesitate. He ran toward the source of the sound, where he saw an elderly woman surrounded by 3 men. One of them was yanking at her bag while she clung to it, her frail hands trembling. "Let her go," Jamal shouted, his voice firm and determined. The 3 men turned to see a skinny boy standing before them. They burst out laughing, thinking he was just a scared child. "What are you gonna do, kid? Get lost before I teach you a lesson," one of them snarled. But Jamal didn't back down. He picked up a wooden stick nearby and stepped forward. "If you don't let her go, I'll call the police," he threatened, trying to keep his voice steady and strong. Seeing the determination in his eyes, the men hesitated for a moment. One of them growled and stepped toward Jamal. But Jamal quickly dodged and struck the man's leg with the stick. The blow wasn't strong, but it was enough to throw him off balance, sending him tumbling to the ground. Realizing the situation was turning against them, the other 2 decided to retreat, leaving their groaning companion on the ground. Jamal turned to the elderly woman, who was still trembling and clutching her bag tightly. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. The woman looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, young man. I don't know what would have happened if it weren't for you." Jamal smiled and helped her to her feet. He walked her out of the alley and escorted her to safety. Before parting ways, the elderly woman took his hand and asked, "What's your name? Where do you live?" "I'm Jamal, ma'am. I live at the end of the street, in the small greenhouse," he answered without much thought. The woman smiled mysteriously. "Thank you again, Jamal. You're a kind boy." The next morning, Jamal woke up as usual, getting ready for school. But as soon as he stepped outside, he was met with an unexpected sight. A luxurious limousine parked right in front of his house. Neighbors gathered around, murmuring in excitement and curiosity. Jamal was stunned. He had never seen such a beautiful car in his life, let alone one appearing in this impoverished neighborhood. From the car, a well-dressed man in an elegant suit stepped out, glanced around, and walked toward Jamal. "Are you Jamal?" the man asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Jamal nodded, confused. "Yes, that's me. Mrs. Hamilton would like to meet you. She's the woman you helped last night. She asked me to personally come here to pick you and your family up." Jamal stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure of what to say. His mother came out of the house, both anxious and curious. After the man explained the situation, the entire family was invited into the car. Jamal could hardly believe that his encounter with the elderly woman the previous night had led to the arrival of this limousine and what felt like the start of an extraordinary journey. As the car drove off, Jamal gazed out the window, watching his poor neighborhood fade into the distance. A strange feeling swelled within him, an uneasy mix of anticipation and hope. He didn't know what awaited him ahead, but he had a strong sense that this would mark the beginning of a new and meaningful chapter in his life. The luxurious limousine rolled slowly down smooth asphalt roads, leaving behind the impoverished neighborhood Jamal had always called home. Inside the car, Jamal, his mother, and his little sister Lily sat on the soft leather seats, utterly amazed by the opulence they had never experienced before. Jamal's mother couldn't hide her worry. She held Jamal's hand tightly and whispered, "Son, do you think this is a good thing? I'm so nervous." Jamal gently reassured her, "Mom, I think she just wants to thank us. Don't worry, everything will be fine." As the car turned onto a tree-lined avenue, an awe-inspiring sight unfolded before them. Mrs. Hamilton's mansion stood on a vast estate, surrounded by meticulously trimmed gardens and a sparkling fountain. Jamal's jaw dropped at the scene, while Lily exclaimed, "This house looks like it's from a fairy tale." The car door opened, and a butler in a black suit greeted them with a bow and escorted them inside. The interior of the mansion left Jamal even more speechless. Marble floors, glittering crystal chandeliers, and artwork lining the hallways. Mrs. Hamilton was waiting for them in the living room, seated in a large armchair. She wore a simple dress that exuded elegance. As Jamal and his family entered, she stood and smiled warmly. "Hello, Jamal," she said, her voice kind and welcoming. "Thank you for coming. I'm so happy to see you again, and I wanted to meet your family as well." Jamal replied politely, "Ma'am, I only did what anyone would do in that situation." Mrs. Hamilton shook her head, her eyes filled with emotion. "No, you did something few people would dare to do. You put yourself in danger to protect a stranger. That act showed great courage and kindness, and I want to repay your kindness." She signaled to the butler, and shortly after, a small feast was set before them. Though Jamal's mother still appeared wary, Mrs. Hamilton made every effort to put them at ease. She shared stories about her family, explaining that she was the mother of Richard Hamilton, a renowned billionaire in the technology industry. "Richard is my only child," she said. "He's very busy with his work, but I still want to do my part to support good-hearted people like you. Jamal, I have an idea, and I hope you and your family will agree." Jamal and his mother exchanged surprised glances. "What idea, ma'am?" his mother asked cautiously. "I want to help Jamal have the opportunity to study and grow. I will sponsor his education at a prestigious school where he can reach his full potential." Jamal was at a loss for words. He turned to his mother, waiting for her to decide. After a moment of deep thought, his mother replied, "You really want to do this for my son? We don't know how to thank you." Mrs. Hamilton smiled kindly. "All I ask is that Jamal makes the most of this opportunity, becomes successful, and continues to do good in the world." In just 1 week, everything in Jamal's life changed completely. He was transferred to a prestigious private school in the heart of the city, a place where only the children of wealthy and powerful families had the opportunity to study. On his first day at the school, Jamal was overwhelmed by the modern facilities: a vast basketball court, a library with thousands of books, and classrooms equipped with cutting-edge technology. But the initial awe was quickly replaced by anxiety. Jamal realized that he was different from the other students. His uniform, though sponsored, didn't quite fit perfectly. His worn-out backpack stood in stark contrast to the designer bags his classmates carried. Most significantly, his skin color made him stand out in an environment where the majority of students were white. As soon as Jamal walked into the classroom, a group of students began whispering. A blonde-haired boy, clearly the leader of the group, looked Jamal up and down before sneering. "Look at this. A new kid straight out of the slums." The entire class burst into laughter. Jamal felt his face flush with heat, but he forced himself to stay calm. He was used to taunts, but here, the humiliation felt magnified. He reminded himself, "I'm here to learn and change my life. Don't let them get to you." The first lesson passed heavily. Jamal quickly noticed that the curriculum was far more advanced than what he was used to at his old school. Still, he refused to let that discourage him. After class, he went to the library and began studying, determined to catch up with his peers. As he was engrossed in his reading, a soft voice broke the silence. "You're Jamal, right?" Jamal looked up to see a brown-haired girl with bright eyes. "Yeah, I'm Jamal. Who are you?" "I'm Emma," she said with a warm smile. "I saw what happened to you this morning. Don't pay attention to them. They don't understand you." Jamal felt a wave of relief. For the first time that day, someone was kind to him. "Thanks, Emma. It's just, everything here feels so different for me." Emma sat down next to him. "I was new here once too, so I know how it feels. If you ever need help, just let me know." From that moment, Jamal no longer felt completely alone. He knew that to succeed in this environment, he would have to work twice as hard. But with Emma's support and his own determination, he believed he could overcome any challenge. The first few weeks at the prestigious school were a series of challenges for Jamal. He not only had to deal with prejudice from some classmates but also had to keep up with the demanding curriculum. The teachers were strict, and the assignments required meticulousness, creativity, and advanced thinking. Jamal felt the pressure, but he refused to give up. One day during math class, the teacher announced the first test. It was considered a significant milestone to evaluate each student's capabilities. Jamal was nervous, but he had spent the past week studying and reviewing in the library, sometimes late into the night. When he received the test paper, Jamal realized it was even more challenging than he had anticipated. He glanced around and noticed his classmates confidently working through the problems, which made him even more anxious. But then he remembered his mother's encouraging words. "Jamal, you just need to do your best. Never let anyone or anything hold you back." Taking a deep breath, Jamal began solving the problems. The math formulas he had memorized started to come to mind. When the teacher announced there were 10 minutes left, Jamal was one of the last students to submit his paper. The test results were announced the following week. To Jamal's surprise, he had earned the highest score in the class. The entire class was stunned, especially the group of students who had previously mocked him. The teacher praised Jamal in front of everyone, calling him a smart and hardworking student. After class, Emma approached to congratulate him. "See, I knew you could do it," she said with a beaming smile. Jamal smiled back, feeling his confidence grow. He realized that effort and perseverance were the keys to overcoming any obstacle. However, Jamal's success didn't make everyone happy. Among his wealthy classmates, some began to feel uncomfortable with how Jamal was starting to shine. In particular, Chris, the blonde-haired boy who had mocked Jamal on his first day, was especially displeased. Chris, the son of a wealthy businessman, always believed he should be the best at everything. One day, as Jamal was preparing for a group presentation, he discovered that his materials were missing. All the notes and drafts he had carefully prepared were gone. Panicked, he searched everywhere but couldn't find them. When Jamal entered the classroom, he heard laughter coming from a corner of the room. Chris and his friends were whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing at Jamal with smug, provoking looks. Jamal suspected they had something to do with it, but he had no evidence to accuse them. Refusing to let himself be defeated, Jamal decided to rewrite his entire presentation during the break. With very little time left, he focused all his energy and worked as quickly as he could. When Jamal stepped up to the podium, he delivered his presentation with confidence and passion. Not only was his speech complete, but it also left a strong impression on both the teacher and his classmates. Chris and his group couldn't hide their frustration as their plan to sabotage Jamal had failed. After class, Emma came over to Jamal. "Chris definitely did this," she said. "You should report him to the teacher." Jamal shook his head. "I don't want to cause more trouble. I'll prove to them that no matter what they do, they can't beat me." As time went by, Jamal earned increasing respect from teachers and some of his classmates. His hard work and optimistic spirit began to change how many people viewed him. However, this only fueled the jealousy of Chris and his group. One day, the school announced its annual science competition, where students had the opportunity to showcase their creativity and innovative thinking. It was the biggest competition of the year, and the winner would receive a prestigious scholarship and the chance to present their project to leading scientists. Jamal decided to participate with a project focused on using solar energy to provide electricity to impoverished areas. He conducted thorough research, spent countless hours in the library, and even built a small working model by himself. When Jamal presented his idea to the judges, he garnered significant attention. One of the judges, a renowned professor in renewable energy, asked many detailed questions about his project. Jamal confidently answered each one, impressing everyone with his knowledge and passion. On the day the results were announced, the entire school gathered in the large auditorium. Chris and his group were also there with their own project, confident they would win. When the name of the winner was announced, the auditorium fell silent for a few moments. Then, a wave of applause erupted as the name Jamal Carter was called out. Jamal couldn't believe his ears. He walked up to the stage and received the award from the principal amidst cheers from his peers. This was a pivotal moment in his life, marking the first major recognition of his relentless efforts. As Jamal returned to his seat, he saw Emma smiling proudly. He also noticed his mother and little sister Lily in the audience, waving at him. Jamal felt his heart swell with hope. For the first time, he realized that his future truly had the potential to change. After his victory at the science competition, Jamal became a well-known name at school. Teachers and classmates began to look at him with admiration, and his confidence grew steadily. Yet, amid his newfound recognition, Jamal never forgot where he came from. Over the weekend, Jamal decided to return to his old neighborhood to visit his mother and little sister, Lily. When the bus stopped at the familiar station, he stepped off and took a deep breath. The air felt the same, but the sight of the impoverished neighborhood tugged at his heart. The rugged streets, the worn-down houses with peeling paint, and the distant sounds of arguments reminded him that many people here were still struggling to make it through each day. Jamal walked into the small greenhouse he had always called home. His mother was sitting and mending old clothes, while Lily played with a chipped plastic doll. When they saw Jamal, both ran to embrace him with joy. "Jamal, you're home," Lily exclaimed, her bright smile lighting up her young face. His mother was more emotional. "Son, I'm so proud of you. The principal called me and told me you won that big competition. You've made me so proud." Jamal smiled, but deep down, he knew he couldn't stop here. He wanted to do more to help his family and the neighborhood. As they talked, Lily tugged on Jamal's arm and whispered, "Big brother, do you have time to play with me today? I've missed you so much." Jamal couldn't refuse her. He took Lily on a walk around the neighborhood, greeting old neighbors along the way. People were surprised to hear about his accomplishments, but it didn't change how they treated him. To them, Jamal was still the kind-hearted boy who was always willing to lend a hand. That evening, as he sat with his mother and Lily in their small kitchen, Jamal shared his plans. "Mom, I don't just want to visit. I want to do something to make this neighborhood better." His mother held his hand, her eyes filled with pride. "I believe in you, Jamal. You've always had a kind heart. I know you'll succeed." That night, as Jamal lay on his old bed staring at the ceiling, he made a promise to himself. "I won't just succeed for myself. I'll do something to change the lives of those around me." After returning to school from his visit to the neighborhood, Jamal carried with him a renewed sense of purpose. Not long after, he received news that left him in disbelief. Jamal had been invited to participate in an international scholarship program for outstanding students. This was an opportunity to visit developed countries, learn from top experts, and contribute to large-scale research projects. The principal called Jamal into his office to share the exciting news. Jamal, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The school is incredibly proud of you for being selected. But be prepared. This program will demand a lot of hard work. Jamal's heart raced. Being awarded an international scholarship was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. But at the same time, he felt nervous. Could he measure up to the talented students from around the world? When he got home, Jamal immediately called his mother to share the news. She was overjoyed, though she couldn't hide her concern. Son, I'm so proud of you, but I'm also worried you'll face many challenges. Everything there will be so different from what you know. Jamal reassured her. Mom, I'll give it my all. This is my chance to learn and achieve something great. I want you and Lily to be proud of me. In the weeks that followed, Jamal spent all his time preparing for the trip. The school supported him financially and helped with the necessary arrangements. On the day of his departure, both his mother and Lily saw him off at the airport. His mother hugged him tightly, tears welling in her eyes. Jamal, I know you'll do amazing things. Remember, you're not just doing this for yourself but for everyone back in our neighborhood. The flight took Jamal to a distant country, where everything was new and modern. Here, he stayed in a dormitory with students from all over the world. At first, he felt out of place. The other students spoke fluent English, while Jamal had to work hard to keep up. But as with every challenge in his life, Jamal didn't give up. He attended his classes diligently, listened carefully, and took detailed notes. Gradually, he began to adapt and even made friends with some of his classmates. One of them was Carlos, a boy from Mexico who had a background similar to Jamal's and shared the same dream of rising above his circumstances. Together, Jamal and Carlos joined a research project on renewable energy. They spent countless hours in the lab, experimenting and refining their models. Their project not only drew the attention of their professors, but was also nominated for presentation at an international science conference. The night before their presentation, Jamal sat alone, gazing at the starry sky through the window. He thought about his mother, Lily, and the impoverished neighborhood where he had grown up. He knew he couldn't stop now. He had to work even harder, not just for himself but for the people he loved and for those waiting for a brighter future. Jamal whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." The morning of the International Science Conference buzzed with energy. In a grand convention center, scientists, teachers, and students from around the world gathered to present their groundbreaking ideas. Jamal and Carlos had spent months preparing for this day, and now, the moment of truth had arrived. As they entered the auditorium, Jamal felt the weight of both the solemnity and pressure in the air. Rows upon rows of attendees filled the seats. Professors, entrepreneurs, and even renowned scientists. On stage, teams presented their projects one by one. Each presentation was impressive, and Jamal couldn't help but feel a pang of nervousness. Carlos patted him on the shoulder with a reassuring smile. "We've worked so hard, Jamal. No matter what happens, we've given it our all." When it was their turn, Jamal and Carlos stepped onto the stage with their renewable energy model. Jamal took a deep breath, looked out at the audience, and began their presentation, drawing from the confidence built through months of preparation. He explained how their model harnessed solar and wind energy to provide electricity to impoverished rural areas. Carlos supplemented the presentation with well-researched data and statistics. After the presentation, the judges began their questioning. A German professor asked, "How do you ensure low costs while maintaining the efficiency of this system?" Jamal didn't falter. He explained how they had designed the system to use inexpensive yet durable materials while optimizing the design to reduce production costs. His answer earned a nod of approval from the professor. When the evaluation was over, Jamal and Carlos left the stage to thunderous applause. They exchanged a look, knowing they had done their best. That evening, during the awards ceremony, Jamal's heart raced as the host announced the winners. When the names Jamal Carter and Carlos Ruiz were called, the room erupted into applause. Jamal felt as though all his efforts had finally paid off. He walked onto the stage, holding the trophy in his hands, and looked out at the audience. In that moment, he wasn't just thinking about himself. He thought of his mother, Lily, and his impoverished neighborhood. He silently promised that this was only the beginning of greater things to come. After the conference, Jamal was welcomed back to school as a hero. He not only gained the respect of his teachers but also of the students who had once mocked him. Even Chris, who had previously been Jamal's adversary, had to admit his talent and determination. However, Jamal didn't let success change him. He remained humble, focused on his studies, and committed to his future plans. One day, Jamal received a letter from Mrs. Hamilton. In it, she wrote about how proud she was of him and expressed her willingness to support any project he wanted to undertake to help his community. The letter moved Jamal deeply. Sitting in his room, he reflected on what he could do to fulfill the promise he had made to his mother and the people in his old neighborhood. Jamal decided to call Carlos and share his idea. "Carlos, I want to start a project to bring clean energy to the neighborhood where I grew up. What do you think?" Carlos didn't hesitate to agree. "I'm in. This is an amazing idea, and we can use our model as the foundation." With support from Mrs. Hamilton and their teachers, Jamal and Carlos began drafting a detailed plan. They surveyed the neighborhood, talked to residents, and learned about the challenges they faced. While some people were initially skeptical, they started to come around after hearing Jamal's explanation. The project gained momentum as more people began to believe in its potential. Jamal and Carlos's project quickly garnered media attention. Several large companies expressed interest in sponsoring the initiative, while volunteers from their school eagerly offered to help. Jamal felt deeply grateful for the support, but he knew the project's success depended on the cooperation of the community. Over the following months, Jamal worked tirelessly, together with Carlos and the volunteers. He installed solar panels on the rooftops of homes in the neighborhood. Community meetings were held to teach residents how to use and maintain the clean energy systems. Each time Jamal saw the smiles of neighbors experiencing reliable electricity for the first time, his heart filled with joy. An elderly woman told him, "Jamal, you've changed our lives. Thank you." The project not only brought light to the neighborhood, but also reignited hope in the hearts of its residents. Jamal realized that the power of unity and compassion could transform anything. He wasn't just bringing material improvement. He had become a symbol of belief and optimism. On the day the project was completed, the entire neighborhood gathered for a small celebration. Jamal's mother stood up, hugged him tightly, and said, "Son, I always knew you would do something extraordinary. I'm so proud of you." As Jamal looked around, seeing everyone laughing, talking, and celebrating, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had truly made a meaningful difference. Yet, in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning of a much larger journey. He silently promised himself to continue dedicating his efforts to the community and to keep striving to achieve even greater dreams. After the success of the clean energy project in his neighborhood, Jamal's story quickly spread across the media. He became an inspiration to thousands across the country. Major newspapers, TV programs, and even charitable organizations invited him to share his journey. However, Jamal remained humble, understanding that his achievements were not solely the result of his personal efforts but also the collective support of many people. One morning, as Jamal was getting ready for school, he received a letter from an international organization focused on sustainable development. The letter, written personally by the executive director, invited Jamal to speak at a global clean energy conference in Geneva, Switzerland. Jamal was stunned and filled with nervous excitement. He immediately called his mother to share the news. "Mom, I've been invited to Switzerland to speak in front of thousands of people from around the world. Do you think I should go?" As always, his mother encouraged him. "Son, I believe this is your chance to share what you've done and learn from others. Go and do your best. Lily and I are always proud of you." With the support of his family and friends, Jamal began preparing for the trip. He spent time researching the topics to be discussed at the conference and writing his speech. He wanted his story to not only inspire others, but also highlight the importance of renewable energy in transforming the lives of underserved communities. On the day of his departure, Mrs. Hamilton came to see him off. She said, "Jamal, you've come such a long way from the day we first met. I always knew you were destined for extraordinary things. Remember, this is just the beginning." The plane took off, carrying Jamal to a new land, where he would step onto a larger stage and have the opportunity to share his message with the world. Upon arriving in Geneva, Jamal was awestruck by the city's beauty. Clean streets, modern buildings interspersed with historic architecture, and the turquoise waters of Lake Geneva glistening under the sun made it all feel surreal. It was his first time traveling abroad, and everything felt new and exciting. The conference organizers arranged for Jamal to stay at a luxurious hotel near the convention center. They welcomed him as an honored guest. But Jamal maintained his humble demeanor. He knew he wasn't there to indulge but to share his story and learn. On the day of the conference, Jamal felt a wave of nervousness as he saw the faces of renowned figures in the fields of science and renewable energy. People he had only read about in books were now seated right before him. However, he remembered his mother's advice: "Just be yourself. Speak from the heart." Those words calmed him. When it was Jamal's turn to speak, the room fell silent. He stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating his youthful but determined face. Jamal began by recounting his journey, from a boy living in a poor neighborhood to standing here today. "My story is not just about renewable energy," Jamal said. "It's about hope. I believe that when we provide a community with energy, we're not just giving them light, we're giving them the power to dream and the opportunity to change their lives." He went on to share the details of the clean energy project he and Carlos had implemented, emphasizing how small, practical solutions could make a significant impact. "I'm not a scientist or an engineer," Jamal said. "I'm just a boy with a dream. But I believe anyone can achieve something great with faith and the support of a community." When Jamal finished, the entire room erupted in applause. Some attendees even shed tears. After his speech, many scientists and leaders approached him, expressing their admiration and interest in collaborating with him. One of those who approached Jamal was Dr. Eleanor Grace, a leading expert in renewable energy. "Jamal, you've accomplished something many of us struggle to do: inspire. I'd like to invite you to join my project, where we're working to bring clean energy to some of the most remote areas in Africa." Jamal was surprised and deeply moved by the invitation. He realized he had stepped into a world where ideas and dreams could become reality. Yet, he couldn't help but think of his mother and Lily and the neighborhood where it had all begun. He promised Dr. Grace he would consider the offer, as there were still many things he wanted to accomplish for his own community. That night, Jamal sat by the window of his hotel room, gazing out at the sparkling lights of Geneva. His heart was full of joy but also thoughtful reflection. He knew his journey was far from over, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. To him, this was not just his story, it was the story of everyone who had believed in and supported him. He whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." After concluding the conference in Geneva, Jamal returned home feeling energized and filled with new purpose. The praise, admiration from scientists, and invitations to join international projects had opened up a whole new world for him. Yet, Jamal never lost sight of the reason he started everything: the small neighborhood where he grew up, his family, and the people still struggling daily to escape poverty. On the day of his return, the airport was bustling with excitement. Mrs. Hamilton, Jamal's mother, his little sister Lily, and even some neighbors had come to welcome him back. They held up signs that read, "Welcome home, Jamal." The atmosphere was electric with joy. Lily ran up and hugged Jamal tightly. "Big brother, I saw you on TV. You're amazing." His mother stood a little farther back, her eyes glistening with pride. "Son, you've done something I never dared to dream of. But I know you'll always be the same Jamal as before. Won't you?" Jamal nodded, taking his mother's hand. "Yes, Mom. I'll never forget where I came from. And I want to do even more to help our neighborhood." In the days that followed, Jamal organized a community meeting at the small local center. He shared what he had learned at the conference and unveiled a bold plan to expand the clean energy project to bring light not just to their neighborhood but also to surrounding areas. "We've accomplished part of it. But this is only the beginning," Jamal said to the crowd. "I want all of us to work together to turn this place into an example for other communities around the world." The crowd erupted in applause. Neighbors who had once been skeptical now felt a deep sense of pride and hope. Jamal was no longer just a boy who had grown up in their neighborhood. He had become a source of inspiration and a leader for meaningful change. The expansion of the clean energy project quickly garnered attention from investors and charitable organizations. A major corporation even offered to fully fund the project. However, this success also drew opposition. Some local businessmen, who profited from selling overpriced electricity to impoverished households, began to feel threatened by Jamal's initiative. One evening, while Jamal was working in his small home office, he received an anonymous call. A man's voice warned him, "Stop your project now, or don't blame us for what happens next." Jamal felt a wave of fear but refused to let it deter him. He shared the incident with Mrs. Hamilton and Carlos. Carlos immediately suggested calling the police, but Jamal stopped him. "We can't let threats scare us into giving up. This is the right thing to do, and I believe we can see it through," Jamal said, his eyes filled with determination. However, the situation escalated when some of the project's equipment was vandalized. One morning, Jamal received news that several newly installed solar panels had been smashed. This not only delayed progress but also severely impacted the project's budget. Jamal decided to hold an emergency community meeting. Standing before the crowd, he explained the challenges the project was facing. "We are up against people who don't want to see change. But I believe that if we stand united, nothing can stop us." Jamal's mother also stood up to support him. "We've endured too many years living in darkness. This is our chance to make a difference, and we must protect it." Her words deeply moved the crowd. They rallied together, volunteering to safeguard the equipment, contributing funds to repair the damages, and offering their time and resources to ensure the project's success. Jamal felt a renewed sense of hope and warmth as he witnessed the community not only supporting the project but actively taking steps to fight for their shared goal. After months of relentless effort, Jamal's clean energy project was finally complete. A small inauguration ceremony was held at the neighborhood's community center, where everyone gathered to witness this historic moment. Standing on a simple stage, Jamal held the microphone and smiled at the crowd. "Today is not just the day we have electricity. It's the day we've proven that when we stand united, nothing is impossible. Light doesn't just banish physical darkness. It brings hope, faith, and opportunity." Jamal pressed the button to activate the system, and instantly, the entire neighborhood lit up. Streetlights, small homes, and even the community center glowed with clean energy. Applause and cheers erupted everywhere. People hugged one another, and many couldn't hold back their tears. An elderly man approached Jamal and shook his hand. "Thank you, Jamal. Thank you for not giving up. No matter how hard it got, you are our pride." Jamal smiled, his heart overflowing with happiness. But he knew this was just one step in a longer journey. He wanted this project to become a model that could be replicated in other places, spreading light and hope even further. That evening, Jamal sat on the steps of his house with his mother and Lily. The warm glow from the nearby street lamp made everything feel cozier. His mother held his hand and said, "You've done something I never even dared to dream of. You've changed not just your life, but the lives of so many others." Jamal looked up at the night sky, where the stars sparkled brightly. He felt a peace he had never known before. Yet deep inside, he understood that his journey was far from over, and he was ready to face any challenges ahead to continue bringing light to the places that needed it most. After the completion of the clean energy project and the neighborhood being lit up, Jamal's story continued to spread far and wide. He became not only a symbol of change within his community but also a nationally recognized young leader. Articles and television features consistently highlighted his journey. International organizations, philanthropists, and major corporations began reaching out to Jamal to discuss potential collaborations. One day, Jamal received a special invitation from Dr. Eleanor Grace, whom he had met at the Geneva conference. Dr. Grace wanted to invite Jamal to join the Global Light Initiative, a program aimed at bringing renewable energy to impoverished communities around the world. The project already had operations in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America, but it needed young leaders with vision and passion to help expand its reach. The meeting between Jamal and Dr. Grace took place at a sophisticated office in New York. Dr. Grace could not hide her admiration upon seeing Jamal again. "Jamal," she said, "you've shown that with determination and the right idea, anyone can make a difference. We want you to become a young ambassador for this initiative, to inspire and lead local communities in creating similar transformations." Jamal felt honored but also a bit apprehensive. "Dr. Grace, I'm not sure if I have enough experience to take on such a big role." Dr. Grace smiled warmly. "Experience can be gained, but passion and perseverance cannot be taught. What you've accomplished in your own neighborhood proves you're more than ready for this role." After some thought, Jamal accepted the offer. He knew this was an opportunity to bring light and hope to communities facing even greater hardships than his own. At the same time, he decided that part of his time and effort would remain dedicated to supporting ongoing projects in his hometown. This decision marked the beginning of a new chapter in Jamal's journey, a chance to take his mission of change to a global scale while staying deeply connected to the roots that shaped him. Just weeks after accepting his role as an ambassador, Jamal embarked on his first field mission with the Global Light Initiative. His first destination was a remote village in Kenya, where hundreds of families still lived in darkness due to the lack of electricity. Life in the village was challenging, but much like Jamal's neighborhood back home, the people held on to hope and optimism. When Jamal arrived in the village, he was greeted by curious eyes and the friendly smiles of children. They had never met someone like Jamal, a young man from America who carried an inexplicable sense of familiarity and warmth. Jamal immediately got to work. He and the technical team surveyed the area, listened to the villagers' needs, and held community meetings to explain the project. What touched Jamal the most was the locals' willingness to collaborate. Despite limited knowledge of technology, they eagerly participated, helping transport equipment and dig trenches for the solar panel installations. During one meeting, a local elder named Mrs. Njeri said to Jamal, "Thank you, Jamal. What you're doing for us is not just bringing light. It's giving us faith that our lives can improve." Jamal smiled and replied, "Mrs. Njeri, this isn't just my project. It's ours. The unity and trust of everyone here are what truly make this possible." Throughout his weeks in Kenya, Jamal spent time not only implementing the project but also learning about the culture, customs, and way of life of the people. Their stories, their resilience in the face of challenges, inspired him to work even harder to help. When the first solar energy system was activated, the village lit up amid cheers and joyous celebration. Jamal stood in the middle of the crowd, watching children play under streetlights for the first time in their lives, and his heart swelled with happiness. That evening, the villagers organized a celebration. They prepared traditional dishes, sang folk songs, and danced under the new lights. Jamal was invited to join, and he eagerly immersed himself in their joy. Later that night, Jamal sat by the campfire with his team. Carlos, his close companion, looked at him and said, "You've done something incredible, Jamal, but I know you're not stopping here. Are you?" Jamal smiled and gazed up at the starry sky. "No, I'm not stopping. There are so many places still waiting for light. I'll go farther, do more, and keep striving for everyone who's waiting for a brighter future." In his heart, Jamal knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that with every light that was turned on, he was one step closer to making the world a better place for everyone. After completing the project in the Kenyan village, Jamal began receiving invitations from various parts of the world. Emails flooded in from organizations, individuals, and even residents of impoverished areas, asking him to help bring light to their communities. This made Jamal realize that his responsibility was no longer confined to a single place. It was to spread his message and actions globally. However, Jamal knew he couldn't do it all on his own. He decided to establish a nonprofit organization called Light of Hope, with the mission of implementing renewable energy projects for underprivileged communities worldwide. He called for volunteers, engineers, and donors from around the globe to join his cause. Carlos, Jamal's close companion, became the co-founder of the organization. "We can accomplish so much more with a strong team," Carlos said during their first meeting. "But we must ensure that every project is community-centered." With support from Dr. Eleanor Grace and the connections Jamal had built through international conferences, Light of Hope quickly gained attention. Major donors began to join, ranging from renewable energy technology companies to global charitable foundations. Jamal's next project was launched in a coastal village in the Philippines, where residents were frequently affected by typhoons and power outages. Jamal and his team conducted a thorough survey of the area, met with villagers, and listened to their struggles. One of the residents, Mrs. Luz, shared her story. "Every time a typhoon comes, we lose everything, our homes, belongings, and even light, but we never lose hope." Mrs. Luz's words only strengthened Jamal's resolve. His team designed a renewable energy system that combined solar and wind power, ensuring that the village could maintain electricity even during harsh weather conditions. Throughout the project, the local community actively participated, helping transport equipment and build support structures for the wind turbines. When the system was activated, the entire village lit up. Small lights in each home, the cheers of children, and the joyful tears of the villagers made Jamal feel that all the challenges had been worth it. That night, Mrs. Luz approached Jamal, holding his hand tightly. "You didn't just bring light to us. You brought us the belief that we can overcome anything. Thank you." Jamal smiled, his heart full of gratitude and determination. He knew the journey was far from over, but moments like these reminded him why he began and inspired him to keep moving forward. As Light of Hope continued to grow, Jamal began facing greater challenges. One of the biggest issues was financial pressure. Despite support from many donors, implementing projects on a global scale required massive funding. Additionally, not all projects went smoothly. Some faced opposition from individuals with conflicting interests, while others encountered geographical obstacles that caused significant delays. One of the most serious incidents occurred in a village in South America, where the organization was installing solar energy systems for schools. A group of opponents, driven by political interests, vandalized equipment and threatened the technical team. Jamal received the news while attending a conference in Europe. Without hesitation, he flew to the site to address the situation. Upon arrival, Jamal found his team under tremendous stress. Carlos approached him with a worried expression. "They've destroyed more than half of the equipment. We're being threatened by people who don't want to see change." Jamal decided to meet with local leaders to resolve the issue. During the meeting, he said, "We're not here to harm anyone. We're here to help. If there are any misunderstandings, let's discuss them and find a way to resolve this together." Jamal's sincere words gradually eased tensions. The local leaders agreed to protect the project and provide support for the technical team. However, this incident made Jamal realize that bringing light wasn't just about technology. It was also about building trust and gaining consensus from all stakeholders. This experience taught him that meaningful change required not only innovation but also patience, understanding, and a commitment to creating harmony within the communities he sought to help. After the incident in South America, Jamal decided to restructure the organization's operations. He realized that expanding too quickly could lead to significant risks. Therefore, Jamal, Carlos, and the team developed a new strategy: focus on quality over quantity, ensuring that every project was sustainable and delivered lasting benefits to the communities. Jamal also began identifying young leaders from local communities to train and empower. "We can't do everything ourselves," Jamal said during a meeting. "We need people from the local areas, those who know their community's needs and culture best." This initiative quickly proved effective. At each project site, Jamal found talented and passionate individuals ready to lead and sustain the projects after the main team moved on. These young leaders not only continued the work but also became sources of inspiration. Much like Jamal himself, at the same time, Light of Hope started developing educational programs on renewable energy to raise awareness and equip younger generations with knowledge. Jamal believed that educating children about the importance of sustainable energy would empower them to become the changemakers of the future. One day, when Jamal returned to the neighborhood where he had grown up, he saw children playing under the solar-powered streetlights that he and his team had installed. His mother and Lily came out to greet him, their eyes filled with pride. His mother said, "Jamal, you've done more than I ever dared to dream, but I know you still have a long journey ahead." Jamal smiled and looked up at the sky. He knew his mother was right. This was only the beginning, and he was ready to continue his journey, bringing light to the places that needed it most. Not just with technology, but with hope, faith, and compassion. As Light of Hope continued to grow, Jamal began to realize that the greatest challenges were not just providing renewable energy but also confronting social, economic, and political barriers. Some traditional energy corporations felt threatened by the rise of renewable energy, especially in impoverished communities where they had profited by selling electricity at high prices. These forces started exerting pressure to obstruct the organization's projects. One day, Jamal received an urgent call from Carlos. "Jamal, we're in serious trouble. BlackRock Energy has filed a lawsuit against us, claiming our projects are infringing on their business interests." Jamal frowned, listening intently. BlackRock Energy was one of the world's largest energy corporations, known for its fossil fuel extraction and supply operations. He knew this legal battle was not just about the law but also a clash of ideologies between two opposing paths for energy development. "We can't let them win," Jamal said with determination. "This isn't just about our organization. It's about the future of millions of people around the world." Jamal immediately convened an emergency meeting with the legal team and advisors. During the meeting, a veteran lawyer suggested considering a settlement to avoid a prolonged legal battle. But Jamal firmly refused. "We can't compromise when the survival of impoverished communities is at stake," Jamal said. "If necessary, I'm prepared to fight this to the end." He also decided to bring the issue to public attention. In a televised national interview, Jamal spoke candidly. "We live in an era where technology allows us to bring light and opportunity to the darkest corners of the earth. But that is being hindered by corporations that care only about their profits. I'm not just fighting for my organization. I'm fighting for communities without a voice." Jamal's story quickly went viral. People who had benefited from Light of Hope's projects began sharing their stories. International media, human rights organizations, and even prominent scientists voiced their support for Jamal. Public pressure mounted, forcing BlackRock Energy to reevaluate its approach. After months of intense struggle, the court ruled that Light of Hope's projects did not violate any regulations. This victory not only saved the organization from the brink of collapse, but also delivered a powerful message. Change is unstoppable. The triumph strengthened Jamal's resolve and inspired others to continue advocating for renewable energy as a means to empower and uplift the world's most vulnerable communities. After the victory against BlackRock Energy, Jamal realized that his organization couldn't stop at providing renewable energy to small communities. He wanted to transform Light of Hope into a global movement, one that not only brought physical light but also illuminated dreams and hope for people everywhere. Jamal organized the organization's first international conference in New York, gathering scientists, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and social activists from around the world. The conference, titled Vision 2030, Lighting a New World, aimed to build a strategic plan ensuring that by 2030, every community globally would have access to sustainable energy. In his opening speech, Jamal stood before thousands, his eyes filled with passion. "When I was a boy, I lived in darkness, not just the darkness of poverty but the darkness of despair. But one small act, one little light, changed my life. Now, I want to dedicate my life to bringing that light to millions of others." Jamal didn't just share his story, he called for action. "We are not just fighting for renewable energy. We are fighting for a world where everyone has the opportunity to live, learn, and thrive. A world where light is not just something that illuminates roads, but also something that brightens hearts." The conference concluded with numerous commitments from organizations and businesses. Many technology companies pledged to support Light of Hope by providing advanced equipment and innovations. Governments from developing nations signed agreements to collaborate on implementing renewable energy projects in their regions. After the conference, Jamal felt a surge of hope. Yet he also knew that his responsibilities had grown even greater. Standing on the rooftop of the building where the conference was held, he looked out at the glittering lights of New York City and thought to himself, "I've come a long way, but this journey is still just beginning." A few weeks later, Jamal's organization launched a new initiative called Light for the Future, focusing on educating young people about renewable energy and empowering them to become community leaders. Jamal personally participated in these programs, traveling to various countries and regions to inspire and support young individuals. One day, while teaching at a school in a remote village in India, a young boy asked Jamal, "Mr. Jamal, do you think I can do what you've done?" Jamal knelt down, looking into the boy's eyes, and said, "I believe you can do even more. It all starts with a dream and determination. If you have both, nothing is impossible." Those words weren't just for the boy. They were a reminder to Jamal himself that his journey wasn't only about his own path. It was about empowering, inspiring, and helping others turn their dreams into reality. After the success of the international conference, Vision 2030, Light of Hope entered a new phase of growth. Jamal and his team launched numerous projects in developing countries. But this time, the focus wasn't just on providing renewable energy. It was on training the younger generation to maintain and expand these energy systems within their communities. Everywhere Jamal traveled, he held workshops, not just to teach but also to listen. He understood that each community had its unique needs and challenges, and the best way to create sustainable change was to empower the people themselves. One of the most remarkable projects was in a small village in Ghana. It was a poor village with great potential for solar energy. When Jamal arrived, he noticed that children didn't have enough light to study at night, and adults relied on kerosene lamps that were both expensive and harmful to their health. Jamal gathered the village's youth and taught them how to install and use solar panels. One of the most enthusiastic participants was Kojo, a 16-year-old boy with bright eyes and exceptional intelligence. Kojo quickly learned how to design energy systems and even suggested small improvements to adapt the setup to the local terrain and climate. "Jamal, I want to become an engineer and bring light to other places," Kojo said, his voice filled with determination. Jamal smiled, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Kojo, you already have everything it takes to do that. Keep learning, and one day, you'll achieve things far greater than I have." When the project was completed, The village was lit up for the first time. Children could study at night, and residents no longer had to depend on kerosene lamps. Kojo became the manager of the village's energy system, teaching others what he had learned. Watching Kojo lead the village, Jamal felt that the seeds he had sown were beginning to grow. This success reaffirmed Jamal's belief in the power of empowerment and education. As Light of Hope expanded its mission, it was clear that the real legacy of the organization wasn't just in the lights it installed. It was in the leaders it inspired and the lives it transformed. The success of the project in Ghana not only brought light but also served as a testament to the power of unity. This spirit carried forward as Jamal and Light of Hope embarked on an ambitious project, providing renewable energy to a vast region in Syria, a country deeply scarred by years of war. Syria presented an entirely different challenge. It wasn't just about technical or financial issues, it was about navigating political and social instability. When Jamal and his team arrived, they were met with the sight of destroyed buildings, dusty roads, and weary people who still carried a glimmer of hope. Jamal quickly realized that this wouldn't be a project that could be completed quickly. "We're not just bringing light here," Jamal said during a meeting with his team. "We need to build trust and help the people here feel that they can rise from the ashes." The team began with small actions: repairing streetlights, providing solar panels to schools and hospitals, and organizing community meetings to listen to the residents' stories and work together to address their challenges. One day, Jamal met Yara, a young woman who had been a teacher before the war. Yara had lost her family in the conflict, yet she stayed behind to care for the children in the village. "Jamal," Yara said, "the light doesn't just help us see better. It makes us feel like we're not forgotten, like someone still cares about us." Jamal was deeply moved. He decided to support Yara in opening a learning center where children could access not only light but also education. With Yara's help, the center quickly became the heart of the community. Children began returning to their studies, and even adults joined technical classes to learn how to use and maintain renewable energy systems. Throughout his time in Syria, Jamal witnessed slow but meaningful transformation. The lights didn't just illuminate streets, they reignited hope in the hearts of the people. When the project was completed, Jamal stood on a hill overlooking the newly lit area. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that no matter how challenging the world might be, the power of unity could create miracles. Returning from Syria, Jamal felt a deep sense of accomplishment for what he had achieved on his journey. Yet, he also recognized that every success came from the help and contributions of countless individuals. He decided to organize a celebration to honor the people and communities who had played a part in the success of Light of Hope. The event was held in New York, the city that had once hosted the organization's first international conference. The guest list included not only scientists, entrepreneurs, and international leaders but also ordinary people from the communities Jamal had helped. Carlos, Kojo from Ghana, Yara from Syria, and even children who had studied under solar-powered lights were present. In his speech, Jamal said, "This journey isn't mine alone. Every step taken, every light turned on, is the result of passionate hearts and helping hands. We've proven that nothing is impossible when we come together." As Jamal stepped down from the stage, he saw his mother and Lily sitting in the front row. His mother smiled, her eyes filled with pride, while Lily whispered, "You've done amazing things, but I know you'll do even more." That night, Jamal spent time with his friends and colleagues, the people who had stood by him throughout his journey. Under the shimmering lights of the city, he said, "We've brought light to many places, but there are still so many more that need us. We'll keep going because this world still has too much darkness to overcome." Jamal's words were not just a promise but a declaration that his journey was far from over. Within him, the fire of hope and compassion continued to burn brightly, lighting the path for the steps yet to come. Jamal's journey reached a major milestone when Light of Hope was nominated for the prestigious International Sustainability Award, the Green Earth Prize. This was not just a recognition of the efforts of Jamal and his team but also a testament to the global impact of their work. The awards ceremony was held in Paris, in a grand hall filled with world leaders, social activists, and leading scientists. Jamal was invited as an honorary guest and representative of Light of Hope. In the days leading up to the event, Jamal felt the weight of expectation. He knew that winning the award would bring the organization additional resources and attention to further their mission. However, Jamal also understood that, regardless of the outcome, their journey didn't hinge on a single accolade. On the evening of the ceremony, Jamal stood under the stage lights, listening as Light of Hope was introduced. When the name of the organization was announced as the winner, the hall erupted in applause. Jamal stepped onto the stage to receive the award from the United Nations Secretary General. In his acceptance speech, he said, "Today, we accept this award not just on behalf of Light of Hope, but for all the communities around the world who have courageously risen to change their own destinies. This is their victory, a victory for those who believe that light is not just a physical tool, but a symbol of hope and belief." Jamal concluded his speech to a standing ovation. After the ceremony, many leaders approached Jamal to express admiration and discuss potential collaborations. Yet, for Jamal, the most memorable moment came when he called home to share the news with his mother and Lily. "Mom, we did it," Jamal said through tears. "But this is just the beginning," his mother replied, her voice full of pride. "Son, I always knew you would do something extraordinary. Keep lighting up the world." Jamal. After receiving the award, Jamal decided to take some time to reflect on his journey and plan for the future. He knew that Light of Hope had achieved much, but the world was still full of places in need of help. To continue the mission, Jamal organized a strategic meeting with his team, focusing on expanding operations and ensuring long-term sustainability. During the meeting, Carlos presented an ambitious idea: creating a global network of renewable energy education centers where young people could learn, innovate, and become leaders in the movement for sustainable development. "Jamal, we've brought light to so many places," Carlos said, "but to sustain this, we need to train a new generation to carry the work forward." Jamal agreed without hesitation. He understood that the future rested in the hands of young people who could bring innovation and continue spreading the spirit of Light of Hope. Over the next year, the organization launched a program to build these centers in Africa, Asia, South America, and the Middle East. Jamal personally visited each location to oversee progress and inspire local teams. He met passionate young individuals, much like himself in the past, and saw in their eyes the belief in a brighter future. One day, when Jamal returned to the neighborhood where he had grown up, he organized a small gathering to thank the community for their support and encouragement. At the event, he shared, "When I was a child, I dreamed of one day escaping the darkness of poverty, but I never imagined that dream would lead me on such a remarkable journey. It all started with one small act, and today, we've not only lit homes but also ignited dreams." The neighbors, his mother, and his sister Lily stood up and applauded. His mother said, "Jamal, you haven't just brought light to the world, you've brought light to people's hearts." In the years that followed, Light of Hope continued to grow, becoming a global symbol of unity and hope. Jamal dedicated most of his life to traveling the world, learning, and inspiring others. Wherever he went, he carried a fire within him, a fire of compassion, faith, and determination. For Jamal, the journey never truly ended. He knew that as long as there was a place in need of light, he would keep moving forward, lighting up the world one lamp at a time.